The Amazon does not forgive. It is not merely a rainforest, it is a living cemetery, a labyrinth of shadows and rot, where silence means you are already dead. In 1981, this crushing, indifferent green consumed a dreamer. His name was Yossi Ghinsberg, an Israeli adventurer who sought the raw, untamed places of the world. Fresh out of military service, Yossi arrived in La Paz, Bolivia, chasing the ghosts of old civilizations and the intoxicating promise of adventure. He found something far more terrifying than any legend. He found Karl. Karl Ruprechter was an Austrian man, charismatic, deeply unsettling, and claiming to be a geologist with intimate knowledge of the Amazonian interior. He spoke of undiscovered tribes, of mountains of gold, of a forgotten paradise hidden deep within the Bolivian jungle, untouched by the modern world. Yossi, along with two new companions, American photographer Kevin Gale and Swiss teacher Marcus Stam, were instantly pulled into Karl's orbit. They dismissed the warnings from locals, the dark looks that followed Karl whenever he entered a room. Youth is often blind to malice. The four men descended into the jungle like moths to a flame. Initially, the journey was grueling but glorious. They navigated the rivers, slept under the endless canopy, and shared the simple rations of canned food. But the illusion of camaraderie began to fray. Marcus, the softest of the group, developed severe foot infections and grew weaker with every step. Karl, their supposed guide, began acting erratically, his maps proving useless, his promises turning hollow. The gold was a lie. The paradise was a myth. What remained was paranoia. After weeks of struggling through thick vine and mud, the inevitable happened. A confrontation. Karl admitted he was not a geologist. His knowledge was based on old folklore and delusion. The realization hit them with the force of a tropical storm. They were lost, led by a madman into the most deadly corner of the earth. Arguments flared. The group split. Marcus, severely weakened, decided to follow Karl by foot, believing the older man's promises of an easier trek. Yossi and Kevin, desperate to escape the nightmare, built a makeshift raft and decided to follow the treacherous Tweetchee River. It was a reckless choice, made out of desperation, but they saw no other option. "We will meet at the town of Apollo," Yossi shouted over the rushing water. A promise that felt hollow even as he spoke it. The river was chaos. It twisted and spat them out, battering the fragile raft against submerged logs. They fought for hours, the sheer volume of water threatening to capsize them at any moment. Then the sound of the unseen came upon them, the roar of a waterfall. They scrambled, trying to paddle toward the bank, but the current was too strong. Kevin was swept away first, pulled under the churning foam, disappearing from sight. Yossi watched his friend vanish, the image searing itself into his mind. Moments later, the raft splintered against the rocks. Yossi was thrown into the maelstrom, slammed against stones until the world dissolved into a blinding spray. When Yossi regained consciousness, he was alone. He was pinned against a log on a tiny spit of sand, utterly soaked, freezing cold, and surrounded by a towering wall of green. Kevin was gone. Marcus and Karl were deep in the interior, likely long dead or hopelessly lost. Yossi was stranded in the pristine, unforgiving heart of the Amazon. His ordeal lasted 19 days. 19 days of solitude that stripped away the layers of civilization and exposed the fragile core of his sanity. The first days were dominated by the agonizing search for Kevin. Yossi shouted his friend's name until his throat was raw, moving along the bank, desperate for a reply. He found nothing but the relentless hum of insects and the chilling silence of the jungle floor. Food was non-existent. He searched for fruit, for edible roots, quickly realizing his urban knowledge was useless here. He subsisted on the few wild fruits he recognized, and for one terrifying period, he was forced to eat rotten monkey flesh he found discarded near the river. The hunger was a constant gnawing pain that eventually morphed into a strange, detached numbness. The nights were the worst. When the sun vanished, the rainforest became a symphony of horrors. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the undergrowth, was a predator approaching. He could smell the musk of jaguars nearby. He knew they were watching him, calculating their strike, waiting for his weakness to become fatal. He slept in trees, tying himself to the branches, convinced that if he closed his eyes on the ground, he would never open them again. The jungle seemed determined to kill him in every conceivable way. One morning, he awoke to the sound of roaring water, only to realize the river had swollen overnight. A terrifying flash flood tore through his resting spot, washing away the meager tools he possessed and plunging him back into the frigid, turbulent water. He fought the current for hours, finally dragging his broken body onto a muddy bank. This relentless battering took its toll not just on his body, but on his mind. By the second week, Yossi began to see things. The jungle walls would shift, melting into monstrous shapes. He saw a beautiful, dark-haired woman, a haunting figure who tended to him, stroking his forehead and whispering comfort. He knew she wasn't real, that she was a product of starvation and dehydration, yet he clung to her image. She was his final tether to human contact, even if she existed only in the recesses of his fevered brain. Then came the physical breakdown. His feet, ravaged by rot and infection, began to swell and split. He tried to walk, but the pain was excruciating, like walking on shattered glass. He realized that if he stopped, the jungle would claim him. He kept moving, driven by a primal terror, though he barely knew where he was going. On the 17th day, he collapsed. He could not move. The despair was absolute, a crushing weight that promised sweet oblivion. He remembered thinking, "Let the jaguar come. I am ready." He lay there for 2 days, fading in and out of consciousness. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold peace. He saw a pig on the ground, a large, dark beast. He lifted his hand to shoo it away, but the pig did not move. He looked closer, and the truth of his hallucination struck him with a terrible clarity. It was not a pig. It was his own rotting foot, bloated, black, and leaking pus. The horror of that realization shocked him back to life. He was not dying peacefully. He was rotting, alive. He knew he had to crawl, even if it meant tearing his skin further. Then, on the 19th day, amidst the agonizing crawl, he heard it. The sound was alien, out of place, utterly unbelievable. It was the roar of an engine. He tried to scream, but only a dry rasp came out. He found a final reserve of strength and dragged himself towards the riverbank. He waved his tattered shirt wildly, his face skeletal, his eyes sunken and burning with madness. The engine drew closer. A small wooden boat appeared, carrying 3 figures. One of the figures leaped out of the boat, his face contorted in disbelief and raw relief. It was Kevin Gale. Kevin had not died in the waterfall. He had fought the current, washed up miles downstream, and spent days convincing local villagers and guides to search for Yossi. Believing his friend might still be alive, he had refused to give up the search, even when everyone else told him Yossi was a lost cause. Yossi was rescued, mere hours from death. He spent months recovering in hospitals, grappling with the physical and psychological scars of his ordeal. But what of the others? Marcus Stem and Karl Ruprechter were never seen again. They vanished into the labyrinth of the Amazon, leaving behind no trace. They remain, to this day, ghosts swallowed by the green. The jungle had delivered its verdict. The true terror of Yossi Ghinsberg's story is not just the external environment, but the profound isolation that broke down the borders of his mind. He faced the worst of nature, but his final battle was against the terrifying whispers of his own starved self. He walked into the Amazon looking for gold and adventure. He emerged having found the brutal, terrifying limit of human resilience. He survived the monster in the jungle, but only barely survived the monster within.